Thank you. Does this work, the microphone? Yeah, okay. Thank you for your introduction and the kind invitation to join this conference here. It's also my first time in Wrocław, so I enjoy seeing the city. So, today I would like to speak about the transformative potential of art in the face of environmental challenges and present to you some of my recent artworks that address these topics. We are currently facing enormous challenges as consequences of climate change, such as extreme weather events with droughts, floods, and heat, but further impacts in loss of biodiversity, ocean acidification, and water scarcity. It will be a matter of our own survival how well we manage this climate crisis in the coming years. At the same time, we are also witnessing the rapid evolution of digital technologies. Could robotics and sensing technologies or AI help in this cause? Science fiction writer Kim Stanley Robinson said recently, "We are now living in a science fiction novel that we are all writing together." The rising number of extreme weather events are creating a dangerous world that is becoming unrecognizable and that more and more resembles scenes from science fiction movies. A book that inspired me at the end of 2021 comes from the Icelandic writer Andri Snær Magnusson. In On Time and Water, he writes about the meltdown of glaciers and climate change facts interwoven with his personal family history. What particularly struck me was the question, what will happen to Iceland without ice? A few years ago, one of its glaciers retreated so much it lost its status as a glacier. This happened for the first time in Iceland. But what will happen to the identity of a country that has ice even in its name when it's gone? I'm giving you a quick overview now about some of my recent works, themes, and technologies, where I'm using transdisciplinary methods, as well as technical experiments with machine learning models or interactive simulations, and my work emerges as an investigation and commentary on current social and ecological developments. A thematic focus is on self-organization and agency in the digital realm, but also in nature, immersion, sensory expansion, and human-machine environment interactions, with the aim to raise awareness for environmental issues. I have been working for many years in art and science collaborations, which will be the focus of today. Nature observation and hands-on work in labs are also an important part of my practice. I have a passion for cultivating slime molds, fungi mycelia, and microalgae at home, but also in lab environments. And I use an eclectic mix of tools ranging from a tattoo gun applied on fungi, from drawings to performance and body hacking, up to outdoor workshops and forest rituals. Here is an example of my prior work. Sound for Fungi, Homage to Indeterminacy is an interactive video installation that simulates fungi mycelia growth, and it was based on a residency at Technical University of Berlin in the Department of General Microbiology, where I exposed fungi to different sound frequencies. Via a hand tracking sensor, people could interact with simulations of different mycelia species, embodying the sound frequency from my lab experiment. This is an installation I developed for a project space in Berlin, where I was creating an inside forest with wood and tree bark collected with a forester near Berlin and digital representations of it. This is an example of a purely digital work, an immersive algorithmic video based on cellular automata developed during a residency at the Poznan Supercomputing and Network Center. This is a performance series called Milieu in urban space, where I walk around urban space, and a living sculpture of microbes grows over the exhibition period in an oversized petri dish. This is a biocybernetic installation called Hülle, where I built algae bioreactors to control 3D scans of a forest and a server farm, and visitors can interact with it by breathing into a device, creating a kind of hybrid ecosystem and feedback loop. Also, I do a series of walks, outdoor walks in forest. Between 2018 and 2019, I was part of a research project at the Technical University of Berlin called Mind the Fungi. And as part of this, I opened a scientific research project to the public via walks in forests. With small interventions, I enhanced the cultural experience of these walks beyond a mere mushroom picking experience. Participants learned how to collect, label, and classify arboreal fungi, and simultaneously got in touch with the earthbound, realizing Donna Haraway's call for kinship from her book Chulocene. An underlying question in most of my works is how can we misuse technologies to create more respectful relationships between all entities? In our times of crisis, it is more important than ever to enable also through art thought processes and imaginations in the here and now to help us recognize our own political agency, which is, I believe, central to constructing a better world. These thoughts have led me to my project Meet Me that I started in 2019, where I have grown human in vitro meat from myself. In the resulting performance, I'm questioning the inviolability of the human body and criticizing capitalist meat production. And I'm looking at the role animals have in our society, suggesting a post-human shift. Animals have become objects of capitalist exploitation, but also the human body is an arena for profit in biotech developments. My idea of vulnerability draws from post-human understandings of the body that counters traditional society that posits the human integrity as a dogma or religion, where the human is the ruler over all of nature. René Descartes, considered one of the first modern philosophers, proclaimed that animals are non-sentient automatons. They eat without pleasure, cry without pain. Their screams are not more than the squeaking of a wheel. His opinion was already by his coevals condemned as murderous and monstrous. Yet looking at industrial animal farming and the current exploitation of animals for fashion and cosmetics, Descartes' approach doesn't seem to be too far from our treatment of animals as machines reduced to produce organic material. We are alienated these days from the production processes as they happen at places we usually don't see. This disconnection allows to easily forgetting where, for example, the steak comes from. And as long as mass production of meat is still being the predominant practice and reality of today, not eating meat is not only an ethical choice, but also a political statement. The COVID-19 pandemic has added another unforeseeable relevance to my project. An article in The Guardian from March 2020 has linked factory farming to the coronavirus. It explains how the animal industrialization has required more and more space, and in consequence, those farms were pushed out of inhabited zones closer to the forests or other wild areas, allowing for easier transfer of diseases from wild animals to farmed animals, from which zoonotic transfer can happen through consumption. An article on the Chinese blog Zhuang from February 2020 gives more details about this so-called evolutionary pressure cooker of capitalist agriculture and urbanization. Growing genetic monocultures of domestic animals removes whatever immune fire breaks may be available to slow down transmissions. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, animal farming accounts for a significant share of greenhouse gas emissions, land use, as well as global consumption of water and energy. And the FAO also estimates that meat consumption will double by 2050. So also we know about the negative impact of industrial animal farming on the environment. The world's appetite for meat seems unstoppable. In theory, it would be of the highest interest of humanity to stop animal farming. A recent study from 2021 highlights the positive impact of lab meat on climate. It uses less water, there's less methane emissions, less ground and grain usage, less deforestation, and it minimizes zoonotic diseases. An article in Nature from last July this year points out the negative side because the energy use in laboratory-grown meat is 60% higher than in regular animal production. This sketch shows the production stages of in vitro meat. This sometimes called clean meat has had usually a big problem stemming from the origin of the culture medium. All cells need some kind of nutrition to grow because they can't just grow in water. As you can see in the number 3 on this sketch, it requires a specific serum, and most cell and tissue culture protocols are based on using FBS, fetal bovine serum, which is produced also in a very cruel way, where the living cow fetus is drained from blood until death for its production. So I would like to show you a video documentation of my project and the performance. It includes some blood. Autophagus dinner performance with myself. Now my piece of cells lives inside this container in a special sterile flask, where we will continue to bring it into the lab and to incubate it. With modern biotechnology, it has become possible to grow new organs or tissue from our cells. In conclusion, I am treating my body as a material, a mechanism for self-sustainable nutrition. Human beings that could put these visions of the future into practice. Life just got one of these pluripotent stem cells. And So, with MeetMe, I applied innovative biotechnological methods beyond a scientific purpose or monetary intent. It engages with the urgent topic of food supply in times of meat mass production and its relevance not only for our consciousness, but also for our future on this planet. It tackles most fundamental myths of taxonomy and limits of the self through biotechnology and experiences beyond human exceptionalism. By testing a possible acceptance or a total rejection of the idea of eating human meat, I also wanted to discuss the way we exploit animals and the options that new biotechnological methods offer us today. This photo shows an exhibition view with a 2-channel video that I created afterwards for exhibitions. And it's shown together with a printed photograph and the eating spoons from the performance. So something that's a little bit lighter. The second project that I would like to present to you in more detail is addressing the topic of water availability. Last year I received a Starts for Water residency at Fondazione Pistoletto in Biella in Italy, where I investigated the impact of climate change on the Alpine region's fluvial systems under the specific challenge of rebuilding relationships with fluvial systems. Already the location of my host is situated perfectly to understand many problems simply by looking out the window. As a former textile fabric, it sits directly elevated next to the stream Cervo that originates about 40 kilometers up in the valley and crosses the Po plain. Starting the residency, I reflected on the complex physical networks of river systems that represent the environmental impact of human activities. Rivers form landscape, but also are a factor of human activities. Rivers form landscape, but also are a factor for human settlement, infrastructure, and economy. But what can waterways tell us about climate change, and how can we measure the human impact on these complex fluid networks? The Piedmont region is specifically dependent on water, which mainly comes from the mountains. Historically, the special soft water of the Cervo stream was relevant for textile production of high-quality garments, but also for agriculture, as 80% of all the rice production in Italy comes from this region. So big parts of its economy rely on water availability. During the residency, I examined parts of the local river system from the Alps to the Po Valley, and I met experts from geospatial engineers to climatologists, to rice farmers, to a visit to a meteorological weather station in a monastery and a water treatment facility. The importance of water for agriculture also becomes evident looking at the Canale Cavour, a human-built water system that feeds all the rice fields, and it's even forbidden for pedestrians to just walk alongside the canals to protect the water supply. Also here, the effects of climate change were already showing. The Canale Cavour last year had unprecedented low water levels, and it was not possible to flood all the rice fields, as it is the traditional cultivation practice. But also biodiversity is changing in the region, as several invasive plants from other warmer continents were able to survive and overgrow much of the local flora in specific areas. A key event was my visit to the CGI, the Italian Glacier Committee at the University of Turin. I was amazed by their archive of photographs of glaciers, maps, measurement tools, and data. And I found handwritten notebooks, field notes from the mountain trips of the Italian geologist Ardito Desio from the 1920s to 1930s. I will now show you a video of the project that resulted from the residency.
What I have been working on in the residency and to the Methodological, I decided to focus on glaciers as the starting point of fluvial systems. Glaciers hold a very big importance not only as storages of water, but also they are something like the Earth's memory. So they hold information about the past climates, pollution, radiation, but also organic material, waste products, bones, fossils, etc. And with climate change at hand, we all know that glaciers are already melting down and they will continue to do so. So in my project, I'm focusing exactly on this topic, and I developed 3 works that address this topic with different materialities, but also with different kinds of engagement point for the visitors. encourage the people that come to see my work to question their dealings with nature and how they handle water down to their daily life resource.
So I hope you got a bit of an impression how the actual work looked like in exhibition setting. And now I will explain you a little bit more about the actual making process of these works. So for the first part, that's synthetic archive. I trained a neural network with images that I collected from the Glacier Committee in Turin. So there were mainly historical images. So the first one was from 1856, dating up until the early 2000s. Then their collection somehow stopped because they're real photo prints, and with digital photography they didn't really continue to collect the images. And I chose a data set of 4 glaciers in the Italian Alps. And here you can see how an image process is progressing in the epochs in the training process of the neural network. So what's resulting are synthetic landscapes that do not really exist, because the neural network just learns specific features of how the mountain or how a glacier looks like, and then, well, combines it together to something new. On a meta layer, this work also looks at the training processes of the neural network and the AI system, and also how digital imagery gets constructed based on your data set and how important it is what data you put in there. I specifically chose to leave some parts of the video in the early epochs of the training process, where it is still somehow glitchy and not so clear, because I like to demystify also the common perceptions of a perfect AI. On another level, it also addresses the problem of translation across various media and languages. I was using a machine learning model with prompts of Ardito Desio's description of landscape and his description of glacier features that were mapped to the visual output. So in these books, his handwritten notes and drawings, they date from 1920 until the 1940s. And the old pencil writing is already quite faded in these books. And it was also probably written, with cold hands up in the mountains. So it's extra hard to read. I worked with an Italian linguist to first transcribe the bad readable handwriting into Italian. And then we translated it with the help of DeepL and human proof into English. And then it was fed into the machine learning system that was translating the text into images. So you see that there's a lot of translation going on.
July 15, 1925, in front
So
of the
this
Simon Glacier. For 2 afternoons, we've been moving downwards towards the lower glacier, making the approach to the glacier dangerous.
I can't regulate the sound. The sound comes through your system. I can't regulate the sound on the speaker set. It doesn't work. So this was a actually short edit of the screening video of this work. The second part of the Glacier trilogy is a sculpture, several sculptures made from glass, and they are filled with meltwater from ice core samples from scientific drillings. And the shape of the sculptures is made from custom plaster models that are made from mountains, and then the glass is blown over these over these casts to resemble mountain features. So the glass actually has imprints of the terrain in it as well. And I received several donations of the ice core meltwater from the Eurocold lab in Milano at the University Bicocca. And there they analyze the scientific ice core drillings that they make around the world. And in the process, before they analyze these samples, they need to work in a kind of nearly sterile environment, because it's not it shouldn't be polluted by the dust that's in the air around us or something like that. So there's a hot wire going around these ice core drillings, and the hot wire melts away a part of this of the ice core, and the meltwater is collected then in a bucket underneath this specific table, and then they analyze the clean sample. And so I convinced them. I asked them, "What are you doing with this meltwater?" And they were just throwing it away after a while. So I convinced them to collect this meltwater for me, and this is the donations that I basically received from them, where I filled the glass sculptures with. The sculptures are hanging in space, and they're complemented by carpets that I made. There are like topological maps of the mountains and glaciers, and they lay underneath the sculptures to somehow make a connection between the ground where the visitors are standing and the hanging sculptures above. And the third part is a simulation of glacial water systems. It's a video sculpture that can stand freely in space, of two screens, panoramic screens on top of each other. And the visitor can observe the progression of ice and how fluvial systems come into being and how they shape the landscape. This was inspired by my idea of the hourglass, where you can see, how time is running down, and once all the sand is at the bottom, well, either you turn it around or it's like over. And I designed a digital system that kind of works in a similar principle. So it simulates the emergence and the melting process of the glacial ice mass. The particle system in the simulation runs over a digital elevation map of a section of the West Italian Alps that's based on a research project that's open source data. So somebody published complete 3D maps of complete Italy, and you can download sections of this map in a resolution of 10 meters, which is quite good actually. And specific properties of the particle system of the water depend on the height level in this system as well. And you can see here there is a sensor that is also part of this installation. So the exhalation of visitors has a direct impact on the melting process in the glacial ice mask, as carbon dioxide, CO2 sensors in the exhibition space are connected to specific parameters in the video. So the CO2 value will change the height level in the mountains, where the water points start to either behave fluid or solidify to ice. With this interactive element, I wanted to blur the line between the natural and the digital world. And it also allows for a very direct impact of the visitor. And exemplifies the impact of humans on the environment in an experiential way. This is a detail of the simulation. It's not a render, it's actually a photograph of the screen with a slightly longer exposure time. And this more or less brings me to the end of my talk, so I leave some time for discussions and your questions. Looking forward to hear your feedback. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Theresa, and we've got a lot of time for discussion, so please, I see first hand here.
Theresa, thank you for a very interesting presentation. I actually really appreciate that you make actual research and like that is like accurate data, and like even this act with collecting the actual water from the glaciers is like very important in my opinion in this artistic process, because for example I saw some pieces recently that were talking. We had this catastrophe in our Odra River. I think you heard about it. Yeah. And I saw some piece that was talking about the life that is like renewing in the system, and there was also like glass bowls filled with this water. It was supposed to be the water from the river. It was filled with sensors, but at the closer look, I saw that there were plants typical for other ecosystems, for like lakes and stuff. So I was like super disappointed, because if you are like talking about this, at least make the effort and go take actual water from the river, not from some pond, and then pretend it was from river. So this is super cool, super great that you're actually doing the whole process as it should be done. But I actually have one question about this Meet Me, which is very, very strong piece, and I think is touching very important topic as well. During the video presentation, there was this moment when you had you were cutting this big piece of meat. But it wasn't the actual meat that was right. So, okay, because I was like, in 2 months, you're able to, what is that? I never saw it. It's like some kind of other reality. So I wanted to ask about this meat and its meaning in the performance and like,
yeah, the subtitles in the video were a bit fast. So yeah, no, this was the first part of the performance. So I recreated, let's say, my biopsy process with a piece of beef, actually. So I kind of combined this recreation, what happened on my leg, where I did the donation, but also kind of being something like a medical butcher cutting up this piece of beef. Yeah, but no, this is kind of impossible to grow. So I wish.
Hi, Theresa. Thanks very much for that presentation. I found it really inspirational and interesting, and a lot of works there that I really would like to find out more about. Specifically to do with the main part of the presentation, this multifaceted work, I was just interested to talk to you about the glass vessels and the way in which they responded to the actual landscape. I know you did some casts, but I'm not quite clear how casting from the landscape ends up with something that's effectively a jar. So if you could talk about that a bit more, because I really liked that part of the work.
It's a bit technically limited by the production process of glass blowing. So it's like, so what I made... I'm not such a trained sculptor at all, but so I built these wooden boxes, and with plaster I formed mountains, like kind of from images, let's say. They're not 3D prints, or they're not like real, but they're like mountains. And with a glass blower from Turin, he started basically at the top of the mountain and blew the glass downwards, similar to the glacier also like moves down the mountain essentially. So, and then I had another kind of loose part that was also like kind of earth resembling, that we were manually pressing on top, so that there were imprints, let's say, of ground and stones or something in the actual glass.
Okay, thank you.
But
That's
it's
very
kind of
helpful.
an improvised process, let's say.
Yeah,
manual
yeah, more
process.
responsive to the idea that,
Yeah.
and the sort of source material was photographs in this case, in terms of the creation of the sculpting of the cast.
Yeah. Basically looking out the window and.
Yeah. Oh, that's fine. And I really liked the way you put a tapestry under it as well that responded to the same basic kind of input. So it was great. Thanks very much.
Hi, Theresa. Thank you. It was very interesting and provoking talk. I have a question concerning your first work presented in your lecture. As you know, Oron Katz and Yonat Zur made in 2003, I think, this project, Disembodied Cuisine, when they created steaks out of the cells taken from living frogs. Later on, they came to this with another work, other works like Victimless Lever, for example, but they always created additional discourse that actually the works were presented as a little bit ironic, because they indicated to cultivate cells, you have to use nutrient product derived from animals. So this is not a solution, actually. As they said, you are coming back to this again. Does it mean that the context has changed? Because I wrote and I spoke to some people from food industry. They say that they are close to solve these problems, but in the same time we were informed that the cost of such a steak would make it unavailable to majority of people. So there are lots of surrounding issues. I'd like you to comment on that.
Yes, this is back in 2003. That's true, and up until recently, that's also true. That it mainly depended on animal-derived serum in vitro meat cultivation. That's because in vitro meat cultivation was never the plan. They just used a protocol that actually comes from stem cell therapy or medical therapeutics, when you try to regrow someone who has lost an ear or something, or some body part in an accident, and you try to regrow this part for medical purposes. So in vitro meat cultivation just used the same process, and it was never thought to be upscaled, because that's why the serum is so expensive. It makes it impossible to be affordable. But actually it's now shifting, and I just recently spoke to a pork in vitro startup from Czech Republic in Brno, and they patented the algae-derived serum, so it's totally vegetal, on microalgae, based on microalgae, and there's other companies that also work with soy, and so now there is actually, I think the main focus of all these startups that are around the globe is to shift to a vegetal alternative, because that makes it a lot cheaper. And then if you think how much funding traditional animal agriculture receives, actually also, if you would shift this funding to in vitro cultivation, it would also become more affordable. And then it depends also on the upscaling. If you are in a prototyping stage, one piece is extremely expensive. if you manage to upscale the production, then of course it also becomes cheaper. But I think, I mean, in general, I don't think that this is the solution, because the solution would just be to eat meat so little, let's say, that the impact is very low globally, you know. So it's the same, in my opinion, it's the same than what we're doing now with cars. We're building batteries to not use fuel anymore, but this is not solving the problem at all. It's just, you know, we're just shifting to something else, but it's not a solution for anything, just maybe creating a new problem in the future that we don't know about yet. And it's similar to in vitro meat cultivation. But for sure, I think it does have potential with these new developments that are here now. And I think that, I don't know, I would say in 5 to 10 years it will develop much more. Because if you think back, it was only in 2013 that the first prototype was released by a Dutch company of in vitro burger. And back then this was like, I don't know, 50,000 euro, like an absurd amount of money that this little burger piece costed, of course. And it's only 10 years ago, you know. So think about how a new technology, how long it takes to develop. It's actually not long. So I think maybe in 10 years or so, this will progress more.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. It was really interesting. And I have 2 questions. The first one is, did you implement the code by yourself, or do you use some tools to do it?
Depends on which code.
Let's say about this glacier artificial
like the neural networks, yes, I trained that myself, which is also with the help of the internet, let's say, like information on the internet and so on. Not so difficult, but with a glacier simulation that was done totally from scratch. So I worked with a programmer, Sage Jensen, and they did the implementation in CUDA, which is very technical now. We wrote it directly on a graphic card language. It's not a specific software or anything.
Okay. And my second question, I really enjoy your work with fungi, and I read a few years ago really that some kind of moths really well convert the carbon dioxide into the oxide and glucose. And did you consider to use in your work some moths or other plants that really do something with this climate gases?
I mean, I like moss. I have moss at home that I sometimes take from forest walks. I don't know yet. Maybe one time an idea will come along and I work with moss. I don't know yet. But it's a very nice, plant species. Kinds of all kind of things from the forest are very close to me somehow. So the forest is a big theme, let's say, in my work in general, or a place to go to.